Before we begin today's story, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because stories like this one are never simple, never black and white, and often reveal something deeper about love, identity, and the quiet ways relationships fall apart. For years, Jason Momoa and Lisa Bonet were held up as proof that real love could survive Hollywood without being consumed by it. They were admired not because they were loud, dramatic, or constantly in the headlines, but because they seemed grounded, intentional, and private in an industry built on exposure. Their relationship felt real in a way many celebrity marriages do not. They didn't overshare. They didn't sell their romance. They simply existed together. That calm image made their separation feel shocking when it finally became public. But what most people didn't realize is that by the time the world heard about the divorce, the marriage itself had already ended emotionally long before. This is not a story about scandal or betrayal. It is about change, timing, and the painful truth that sometimes love survives, but alignment does not. When Jason Momoa and Lisa Bonet first met, it didn't feel like a strategic Hollywood pairing. There was no publicist's plan or media rollout. Jason had admired Lisa from afar since he was young, long before fame ever found him, long before he had stability, recognition, or influence. To him, Lisa wasn't just an actress. She represented independence, depth, and a kind of quiet confidence he aspired to. When they finally crossed paths, that admiration turned into something real, intense, and deeply emotional. Their connection grew slowly, intentionally, without urgency. They weren't chasing marriage or attention. They built a life first. Children came before ceremony. Responsibility came before image. From the outside, it looked like a relationship rooted in substance rather than performance. But from the inside, it was already shaped by a difference that would later become impossible to ignore: timing. Jason was still climbing. Lisa had already arrived, experienced it all, and stepped away. At the beginning, that difference worked beautifully. Jason admired Lisa's calm perspective, her emotional maturity, and her refusal to be consumed by fame. Lisa respected Jason's ambition, his optimism, and his hunger to build something meaningful from nothing. Their lives complemented each other because they were moving in opposite directions toward the same middle ground. Jason was trying to become someone. Lisa was trying to remain herself. For a while, that balance felt perfect. But ambition doesn't freeze in place, and neither does self-preservation. Over time, Jason's drive intensified rather than softened. Each opportunity validated years of struggle. Each success reinforced movement. Lisa, meanwhile, became more committed to stillness. She wasn't evolving toward expansion. She was evolving toward peace. When they eventually married, it wasn't the beginning of something new. It was an attempt to stabilize something that had already begun to stretch under pressure, neither fully acknowledged yet. Their marriage didn't fall apart because of one explosive moment. There was no single argument, no betrayal, no dramatic turning point. Instead, the separation happened quietly, almost invisibly, through small shifts that accumulated over time. Jason's life began accelerating in ways their relationship was never designed to withstand. When his career finally exploded, it demanded constant movement. Long shoots in distant countries, months away from home, endless travel, nonstop visibility. Success didn't just change his schedule. It reshaped his identity. What once felt like a shared journey slowly became two separate paths moving in the same direction, but at completely different speeds. Jason was chasing momentum. Lisa was protecting grounding. Neither was wrong, but neither could follow the other without losing something essential. Before fame arrived, Jason's world revolved around uncertainty. Auditions, rejection, short-term work, and waiting defined his life. During those years, Lisa represented stability. She was home. She was consistent. She had already lived through the chaos of fame and chosen to step away from it. That contrast created balance, but once success arrived, everything changed. Opportunity began chasing Jason instead of the other way around. The industry demanded presence, reinvention, and constant engagement. Success became intoxicating, not because of ego, but because it offered validation after years of struggle. Lisa, however, had already learned what success costs. She wasn't interested in rebuilding home every few months or following momentum across continents. She wanted routine. She wanted predictability. She wanted a life where presence mattered more than recognition. That difference slowly transformed love into tension. At first, they tried to adapt. Time apart was framed as temporary. Distance was justified as necessary. But physical separation gradually turned into emotional separation. Jason was surrounded by new people, new environments, and an industry that rewarded constant change. Lisa remained anchored to continuity and familiarity. Their conversations shifted. What once felt intuitive became negotiated. Decisions became logistical instead of emotional. According to people close to them, resentment was never the issue. Incompatibility was. Jason was evolving through expansion. Lisa was evolving through protection. The problem wasn't conflict. It was divergence. Jason later admitted he didn't recognize how much he was changing until the gap between them became impossible to ignore. The man Lisa fell in love with had been driven but present. The man he was becoming was successful but rarely available. By the time emotional distance fully replaced intimacy, they weren't fighting anymore. That's what made it more dangerous. Silence replaced conflict. Coordination replaced connection. Support became functional rather than heartfelt. Jason was living in a world that demanded constant output, energy, and visibility. Lisa was retreating inward, prioritizing reflection and emotional stability. Even their parenting styles began to highlight the divide. Lisa valued structure and grounding. Jason leaned toward spontaneity and movement. What once complemented each other now caused friction. The pandemic intensified everything. Forced stillness exposed the distance rather than healing it. While Lisa found clarity in routine, Jason felt restless and disconnected from the identity that work had provided. It became impossible to ignore that the marriage no longer reflected who either of them was becoming. There was also the weight of emotional history. Lisa's grounded connection to her past, including her respectful relationship with her former husband, was something Jason had always publicly accepted. But privately, it reinforced the feeling that Lisa's emotional world was already complete, deeply rooted, and stable in ways he couldn't fully enter. Jason had built a future with her, yet sometimes felt like a guest in a life already fully defined. Over time, admiration quietly faded, not into anger or resentment, but into detachment. Jason later reflected that the moment curiosity disappears is the moment everything begins to unravel. They didn't stop caring. They stopped seeing each other the same way. And once that shift happened, the marriage no longer felt like something either of them could emotionally return to. By the time the separation became public, the marriage had already ended long before. Legal documents later confirmed an October 2020 separation date, marking the moment they both acknowledged what had already been true privately. What followed wasn't a dramatic breakup, but a careful untangling of shared life. They chose silence not to deceive, but to protect their children and preserve dignity. Public appearances showed no visible cracks, but privately they were already co-parenting rather than partnering. When they finally released a joint statement in early 2022, the language was deliberate and gentle. There was no blame, no bitterness, only acceptance. For fans, it felt sudden. For Jason and Lisa, it was long overdue. After the announcement, Jason remained quiet. He allowed speculation to grow, knowing no explanation could capture the emotional complexity of what had happened. It wasn't until a year later, after the divorce was finalized, that he felt ready to speak honestly. Not about paperwork, but about truth. Jason explained that the damage wasn't caused by anger or betrayal, but by identity loss. Success reshaped him in ways he didn't fully recognize until it was too late. He became consumed by work out of fear that momentum would disappear if he stopped. Without realizing it, he stopped being emotionally available. Lisa wasn't asking for expansion. She wanted home. That difference became impossible to reconcile without sacrifice. Neither could survive. One comment Jason made later sparked controversy when taken out of context. When he described moments of emotional estrangement as disgusting, he clarified that it was never directed at Lisa as a person. It was his reaction to realizing they had become strangers. The devastation of losing admiration, not love, was what haunted him. He explained that when admiration fades, love struggles to survive. The pain came from recognizing that pretending everything was fine felt dishonest. The divorce wasn't about rejection. It was about grief. Grief for the person he used to be, Grief for the marriage he couldn't preserve. Grief for a truth that arrived quietly but permanently. After the divorce, there was no celebration, only reckoning. Jason and Lisa agreed from the beginning that their children would remain protected. Joint custody, equal responsibility, no financial disputes. Beyond legality, there was mutual respect. Jason admitted fatherhood became his grounding force. Fame expanded his world, but family narrowed his focus. The divorce forced him to confront what success had cost him: presence. Lisa, meanwhile, remained private, making peace with the outcome long before it became public. Her priorities never changed. Stability, calm, and protection of her children remained central. Healing didn't come instantly. Accepting that a love story had ended didn't erase grief, but clarity helped. Knowing neither of them failed, knowing neither betrayed the other, they simply reached a point where staying required more compromise than either could survive. Jason moved forward cautiously, dadding without urgency, speaking less about forever and more about alignment. The marriage shaped him, humbled him, and forced him to understand that love doesn't always end because it disappears. Sometimes love ends because the people inside it evolve in opposite directions. Jason Momoa and Lisa Bonet didn't fail at love. They honored it enough to walk away when it no longer reflected truth. Their story isn't tragic, it's human. It reminds us that longevity alone doesn't define success. Honesty does, presence does, alignment does. And sometimes the bravest choice isn't holding on, but letting go before resentment replaces respect. So the question remains: did Jason and Lisa make the right decision by walking away instead of forcing something that had already changed beyond recognition? Or do you believe some love stories deserve one last attempt, even when the signs are clear? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join us for the next story where we explore the quiet truths behind the lives we think we understand.